Hi, this is Bobby Kimbrough again. Welcome to Off the Cuffs. Today I'm very excited. I have a young man with me, Joshua Black. He's here with me today to talk about some issues and just have a conversation about protesting and what's going on currently in our country and in our city. So, Josh, I want to welcome you to Off the Cuffs. I have to fist bump you because of keeping our distance. So welcome to Off the Cuffs. Basically, you know, I'm glad you're here. I just want to talk to you. Tell me about who is Joshua?
Yeah. Well, just so everyone knows, I was born and raised here in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Went to high school, Trefo for sure. Still here. I went to Carver High School. I went to Winston-Salem State University. I'm someone who's really passionate about effective leadership, which is for some reason I always find myself at the lead of the pack. So, you know, I helped plant a church here in Winston-Salem. After I finished planting a church here in Winston-Salem, I started working, managing bars and restaurants downtown Winston-Salem. Prior to that, I worked for the city of Winston-Salem, mentoring young black men, doing youth basketball programs, getting volunteers for tutors for students that needed help with homework, things of that nature. And, you know, so now that we're in a kind of a crazy climate with, you know, the racial tension going on here in America, you know, I've kind of felt I've needed to lead as far as that capacity is concerned. And so it's kind of landed me somewhat in the spotlight here recently from organizing protests and kind of doing more to see the change that I'm hoping that may not even happen in this lifetime, but, you know, hopefully in future lifetimes.
You planted the seed.
Yeah.
First of all, I want to thank you and all the protesters for having peaceful protests inside the city of Winston-Salem. It's the first thing I want to do.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
The next thing I want to say is that there's nothing wrong with peaceful protests.
For sure.
I met you last week or so ago at one of the protests. Mm-hmm. And then you and I talked on the side of the road on Trade Street. Mm-hmm. And I was impressed with your conversation. I was. Matter of fact, I was sharing with them this morning about, you know, you talked about the leadership we have here. Mm-hmm. You talked about the protests. You talked about the things that you thought were wrong, the mm-hmm. things that are wrong. Mm-hmm. And so then I saw you again at the other protest. And so I felt necessary and compelled to invite you to come to Off the Cuffs today. And just, I want to hear you. You know, I look at you as the millennium. You know, we were talking about ages. You having a birthday coming up, what, Friday, Saturday?
Yeah, for sure, Friday.
You're going to be 30 years old, right?
32.
32.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're getting old. Yeah. And so we were talking about our differences in our age. And I want to hear you when let's just have a conversation of what you see happening, not only here in Forsyth County, but what you see happening across the country. And what do you think that law enforcement, as you and I were talking off camera, what do you think we can do differently? Or what do you think we should do?
For sure. As we chatted earlier and we've talked about just the policies that are part of our police department, but I also think a huge thing as it translates to the community is transparency. And so how does that transparency relate to those people? Because a lot of times we have that inward focus whenever we're part of, you know, maybe a police department or may be in the know and other people aren't in the know. And so, you know, even having these conversations, I'm finding out things that are policies that are part of our police department that hold our police officers accountable. So it's how do we translate that to the people in our community to make sure that there's full transparency with the police department. And so obviously is the Winston-Salem Police Department perfect? By no means. But I think after having these conversations with the police chief, yourself, Mayor Alan Joins, that we are a step above other cities and other police departments. And we're working towards to make sure that we have that accountability and transparency. And so, you know, me and Mayor Alan Joins, we've had tough conversations about, you know, people weaponizing the police department. And so what that means is, you know, we had a situation happen here in Winston-Salem with Hope Lawn Care. And, you know, the guys, they were African-American, they were in a neighborhood, they were cutting grass, and someone in that residential neighborhood felt uncomfortable and felt comfortable enough to call the police because she saw black people working in the neighborhood. And so obviously I don't blame the police officer that showed up, especially if, they show up and they're expecting the best out of the people that they're, encountering. And so that's what I want more police officers to do, to expect the best out of the, minorities that they're, coming in contact with or encountered with. But how do we stop people from feeling the need to call the police when it is unnecessary because they feel uncomfortable with black people or minorities? So
why do you said people weaponizing the police? Why do you think people feel uncomfortable? You and I were talking about racism in America, right? It's no secret that there's racism. We would be lying to one another if we said that racism not exist. And I think that the problem comes in when we don't address the racism.
For sure.
That's when the problems come. So when you look at it from a millennial standpoint, a 32-year-old young man, soon to be 32, what do you see is the problem when you say people are weaponizing the police? For example, a young lady in New York who called the police and said the black man was attacking her. She weaponized the police by doing that, by saying a black man is attacking her. So now the police comes, and they already come with this preconceived myth that is untrue, that she's being attacked by someone who's not attacking her. So the police come on high alert to deal with what they have been predisposed to as a black man attacking her. And so, so what's your take on when you say that?
I mean, it's a tough conversation. It's tough to even kind of, take those things into consideration whenever you talk about people weaponizing the police department, because it's just deep-rooted racism, and even racism to a degree that some people don't understand, that they view black people differently and they view minorities differently. And so when you've had a long period of time where people have been able to do this and no one's really said, okay, wait, how are we allowing this? How are people able to weaponize, the police department and be able to call them? And so it's kind of one of those things where, like, we have to meet this tough situation and this tough conversation head on and not just let it keep happening, because that's what happens. It keeps happening and people think it's okay that they can call the police because they feel uncomfortable. We have to say, okay, what are we going to do about this? How are we going to meet this head on? We may not have all the answers right now, but we need to figure this out. We need to have these conversations. And so, you have people that may make that call because they feel uncomfortable. I've had it happen to me moving out of an apartment complex. A resident there, and I lived there for 2 years. A resident called the police, thinking that I was committing a break-in, a B&E, a breaking and entering. And luckily, when the police officer showed up, he expected the best out of me. It could have went south, but it didn't. When he showed up, he expected the best. We had a conversation, and he went on about his way. But I was extremely upset that someone felt comfortable enough to call the police, because if we're frank, if I was a white male putting things into a Chrysler minivan, that would not have happened.
Right.
And so we need to have these conversations of why do people feel comfortable doing that, and how do we stop that from happening? I don't have the answers, but I'm willing to have the conversations with people to see how we can fix that.
So every Friday we do a thing called Black and White. Can we talk? And I sat with a middle-aged white professor who is the same age as I am, middle-aged man, white, and we talk about issues of race. We talk about real uncomfortable situations. And he and I were having a conversation last Friday, and he talked about racism in America. And he asked me, do I experience racism by being in law enforcement or being a sheriff? And I've said this on many occasions, that when people see me, they see a black man. You don't know I'm the sheriff if I'm in Eisenhower, North Carolina.
For sure.
And if I'm here, you may not even know it here, depending on where you've been or what you've been doing. And so I understand racism. I've been profiled, stopped, even as a special agent. The guys in the GRO, the Greensboro Resident Office, we used to have real conversations, and it would upset me that as an agent, how dare somebody stop and profile me? But then I realized a long time ago that when people see me, they have no idea who you are, what you, the things that you have ascended to, and the accolades that you may possess. And so racism is real in our country. I get that. I understand that. But I think you said something that was very important. Let's talk. Let's work through this.
Yeah.
That is so important, that we have to acknowledge one another and acknowledge our differences. There's nothing wrong with us being different. That's what makes this country great. It's our differences. But you know what I've been so impressed with is that all of the protests that I have witnessed and that I have been to, the number, and I mean numbers, of white, Latinos, I mean, these are not black protests.
Exactly.
And it's just been amazing to me that our white brothers and sisters have joined in the protest and are making a difference.
For sure.
You know, and I think, and I ask a lot of people, why do you think this one was the straw that broke the camel's back? Why do you think this one, Mr. Floyd, why do you think this one galvanized the people?
I think people are just fed up. People are fed up, and it's not just black people that are fed up. You know, our white brothers and sisters, as you mentioned, they've been showing up in the masses whenever you talk about these protests. And when I look in the crowd, honestly, I'm seeing more white people than black people that are in the crowd. And so
1,000 plus came through here the other day, right?
Yeah,
I was looking out the window, right? And it was like a scene from the Malcolm X movie when he looked out the window, right? But the difference was when you looked out the window, it wasn't all black.
Exactly.
It was the majority of white. And I was like, oh my God.
Yep.
The people have truly spoken now.
Yeah, and so you have these white protesters that they cannot relate, you know, what we go through as minorities on a personal level, but they do have some sympathy and empathy to what is actually happening in our local communities and nationally too as well. And so the biggest question that I've been getting from my white friends are what can we do? And, you know, one of the easiest things that you can do is, you know, go to a protest and, you know, maybe post on social media about some of these issues. But I think that they're fed up to the point of asking those questions. What can I do to help? Is there anything that I can do to help?
So you being a protest organizer, at the end of the day, what's the end game? What do we want? What do you want?
So my purpose,
I have an answer, but I want to hear yours.
For sure. I want our community to come together. And so one of my biggest things for the protest that, you know, I organized on Tuesday was to have a platform to communicate. It wasn't necessarily to march, and we ended up marching spontaneously through downtown Winston-Salem, but my whole point wasn't to march. It was to have kind of a platform to communicate, like, hey, this is awesome. Like, we need protests. This is a great thing. But what's going to happen after all of this is over, when your friends stop posting on social media, when the media is no longer covering it, and you're not getting invited to podcasts? What's actually going to happen after that? And so it was more so I wanted to have that platform to say, hey, we need systematic change. And so we're not going to get that.
So what would be one example of a systematic change for you?
So the conversation's already been had, and I chatted with Mayor Alan Jones about it, as far as being specific with having a hate task force dedicated to hate groups. And so I know that the police department has, you know, a few officers that are dedicated to monitoring these groups, but how do we make that an official thing? And I think that builds that bridge with the community to say, like, hey, this is important to us. This is important to our city, to make sure that we're monitoring these hate groups, and that, you know, we don't see things that happen with maybe Ahmaud Arbery, or, you know, the countless other cases of, you know, people that had the warning signs. The warning signs were there prior to these things happening. And I don't have all the answers by no means, and I don't think, you know, anyone has all the answers, but I think that's a good step to build that bridge with our community to say, hey, look, our police department is willing to do this. We care about our minorities and, you know, the people that are in our community this much, that we're willing to put some resources to this. And so things as simple as that, you know, and that's not the only thing, but, you know, I've personally have a list of things that, you know, I have conversations that I want to be had about them, and what can we do about it. And so that's just a, you know, example.
So do you have any demands of the sheriff's office?
Not currently, not any I'm willing to talk about right now. But obviously the task force, I think, kind of coincides with that. So, you know, I hope that the sheriff's department is a part of that conversation, and making sure that happens here in our county and in our city.
Well, you know, one of the things we pride ourselves on is being conversational. We welcome conversation. We think that moves the needle, conversation. And so I welcome that. So we talked about a lot of demands that are being made. A lot of demands that I'm seeing on the TV now is defund law enforcement, disband them. What's your thoughts on that?
I'm not I'm not for the whole defunding law enforcement.
What about disbanding them?
I'm not for that either. Obviously, law enforcement is needed. We need to take a look at funding as far as, our departments are concerned and where those funds going to, where they allocate it to. I'm wanting, more money to go to salaries. I'm wanting more money to go towards training. And so whenever you talk about defunding that organization, you can't have more training. You can't increase salaries. You can't do things of that nature, which I think is going to help solve the problem in the long run. I'm not thinking of, next week or the week after that or even a year. I'm thinking multiple years of systematic change here. And so whenever you talk
So give me an example of one systematic change. If you had a magic wand right now and you could say, whoosh, I'm going to make a change right now, what would it be in law enforcement?
It would be what I mentioned earlier. Also, one of my biggest things that, and I've had conversations with police officers, and this probably is a conversation that has come up at least 5 times with conversations I've had with police officers. And I don't know exactly how to fix this, but this is one thing, if I had the magic wand, I would do it. But what has been the consensus with a lot of people is you have, these kids that may grow up in a different area of town or their county or wherever it may have you. And we're talking about white kids that may not have any life experience. They turn 21. They, go through 6 months training with the police department. 3.5 months in a car with someone else or as having a partner. And you throw these people into, say, a neighborhood like East Winston. They've never been a part of this community or a Black African-American low-income community before. And so, that interaction that they may have with the people in that community is probably going to be totally different because they have no experience when it comes to being in that community. And so that's one thing that we need to look at.
Understanding and relating to the culture.
Exactly. And so that's one thing that we need to look at and figure out how can we systematically, change that. And so if I had a magic wand, that would be one thing.
Have you ever thought about going in law enforcement?
I actually have. It was a while ago, but not currently.
You interested in going into it?
I don't know. I've had that question asked of me of my minority friends that are police officers, and the biggest thing that they say is that, we need more police officers. We don't have anyone in those communities that per se want to be a police officer. So, that's a question that's been raised. I'm not against it, but it's not something that's on my radar currently.
I'll tell you what I'm willing to do, right? Mm-hmm. If you decide you want to go into law enforcement, right? You pass the minimum requirements. I'm going to personally hire you.
Okay.
Okay?
All right.
No, it's a done deal.
All right.
And I say that because what I see in you is a very articulate young man. I see in you your compassion and your passion for change and doing what is right. And so, I look at the TV, I look at the news feeds, and I see everything that's happening across this country. And I don't want incidents that have happened to taint the totality of law enforcement.
For sure.
Because you have fine men and women that serve and protect this country.
For sure.
This county, this city. You have people that get up the next day after being verbally abused, spit on, talked about, and come back to the fight again. Don't get me wrong. There are some bad apples in every profession you can think of. There are some bad preachers, teachers, politicians, police officer, even bad plumbers, right? I say that based on experience I've been having trying to get my parents' house plumbing fixed. The guy I was talking to, after them paid him roughly $4,000, I called him and complained, and he hung up on me.
Man,
right?
that's crazy.
So, right. So my point is, in my mind, he's a bad plumber, right? Because his customer service and addressing my needs after paying him, and the way he treated me and talked to me and hung up on me and not he wanted to hear what I had to say. Yeah. So my point for sharing that is that there are bad people in every profession under the sun because we're taking an imperfect person. We're all imperfect to some degree. and we're placing them in a situation and expecting perfect results every time. See, a police officer has to be perfect damn near every time he or she hits the streets.
For sure.
Because you're dealing with a range of emotions from people from all walks of life.
Split-second decisions.
Split-second decisions,
Yep.
boom. And so I love having conversations and dialogue because I welcome opinions. I do. I welcome other thoughts. I think that is how you grow, organically, by allowing people to express themselves. What I will tell you is that law enforcement is truly changing across the country because what is happening. There's so many things happening that is causing it to change and grow. It's causing people. I'm seeing police chiefs, sheriffs like myself and all over the country that are coming out, speaking out, and standing with protesters all over the country. I talk to my colleagues across this country as far as Texas who are sharing similar experiences about walking with the protesters, kneeling with them, holding hands. And that says a lot. And that says to me that there's a change coming.
How do you feel about the leadership of certain cities that may have not stepped up to that level? What do you have to say about them?
Well, you know what I will tell you is that see, and hear me out. Each city has its own personality. A police chief has to be careful sometimes when they step up, depending on who their city, county representative is, who their mayor is, because he or she can be fired. You with me?
For sure, yeah.
I think that a lot of times there are people that want to step up that for selfish reason or self-preservation, they refuse to just stand still and not say nothing. If that would have been my case, they would have had to fire me because I could not be silent. I had to walk with you guys.
I'm glad you said that.
I had to walk with you guys, not only as a law enforcement professional, not only as a black man, but as a human being, a child of God.
For sure.
You have to speak up.
For sure.
You have to do what is right. And so when I look at the narrative is that as an elected official, I answer only to the people every 4 years, and I answer to God, right?
For sure.
And so the people can fire me in 4 years. They can, right? And so I have to answer to the people. You never forget. There's a sign outside when you came in. It says, "Never forget. No one man is greater than the people, and never forget we serve the people."
For sure, and I'm glad you said that, and I'm glad you have that mentality. I think that's one of the biggest things that we've been able to see in our city, and to be able to set an example for other cities, to have our leadership saying, "Hey, we're standing with our people," to have our businesses. You look over across the United States and you look at the media, a lot of these businesses have boarded up and, they're scared, rightfully so. But, here in Winston-Salem, all the business owners in the area where we had our protest Tuesday, they unboarded their building, said, "Hey, we've got water, snacks for anyone that needs it." And so I think the biggest thing as far as us being able to have peaceful protest here in Winston-Salem is, being able to say, "Hey, the sheriff's standing behind us, the mayor's standing behind us. They're with their, their community, police chief, the whole nine." We have our business owners, elected officials, and everyone's standing up and coming together. And so I think that's how we've been able to see what has happened here in Winston. And hopefully that will set the example for, other leaders, business owners, and community activists, across the United States.
You know what is interesting is that, and I say this all the time, being from Winston-Salem, born and raised here in the Trey Fold, it's a blessing and a curse sometimes.
For sure.
More so a blessing, though. When I say a curse is because everybody knows you.
Exactly.
And my phone number has been the same for the last 20 plus years. So people will call me, I don't care what. They will call me out, right? And at the same time, it's a blessing because this is home to me. And I have to go into my city to get my haircut, right? I have to come into the city.
For sure.
I live in, I hang out in the city. my family live in the city. My family members. I got aunties that live in Cleveland projects, Cleveland homes. I got people that live in, all over. Got first cousins that live on Northwest Boulevard.
Yeah.
So this city is my city. You know what I mean? And at the end of the day, when I'm no longer sitting here, this city will be my home.
Yeah.
This city will be where, they lay me to rest at. And so I have to have an accountability to the people here.
For sure.
When the people see me, they don't say Sheriff. They say Lil Bobby, because my father's Big Bobby. Or they'll say Kimbrough.
Yeah.
They're either Little Bobby or Kimbrough, right? They forget the titles, which don't matter to me.
Yeah.
I don't care about that. But this is home to me. So I have to stand with the people. When the people are right, I'm going to stand. And then when the people are wrong, I'm going to say, hey, can we talk about this? Yeah. Let me show you what's really happening.
Yeah. And I think you get, and anyone that is in your position being from the area that they're serving, they have, because they have those deep roots in the community, there are things that you can say that someone who doesn't have those deep roots,
right.
can't say, or, you have more respect from the community because you have those roots, in the community.
And I get calls sometimes, they say, yo, Kimbrough, man, that ain't right, man. You need to check this, man. You need to check that, right? They call me out too now. Yeah. I'm not immune from that, right?
For sure.
But I love the fact that when I'm right, they ride with me.
For sure.
When I need the support, they give it to me.
For sure.
And I appreciate that from the people. I appreciate you for keeping the protests peaceful. You have no idea what that means to me, man. When I talk to my buddies around the city, like in Greensboro, and I probably shouldn't say this, but I'm gonna say it anyway, right? So when I talk to my buddy in Greensboro, my buddy in Charlotte, right? I said, man, y'all keep that madness over there, man. We gonna be peaceful. We gonna protest, but we gonna be peaceful, right?
For sure.
And so, I talk to these guys all over the state and all over the country, and I'm so proud, man, that right here in my hometown, we setting an example
for sure
for the rest of the world, the rest of the state.
Yeah,
we protest and make no mistake about it.
Yep.
But we're doing it peaceful.
Exactly.
We're doing it with love. I saw people hugging one another during the protest.
Exactly.
Man.
Yeah.
I saw people dapping each other up. Fist bumping, elbow bumping.
Yeah.
And I was telling them the other day when I saw you, I was sitting in my car right there on Trade, and this young man rolled up on me. I'm like, man, who is this dude? I mean, he just rolled. I mean, out of nowhere.
I was like, oh, I shouldn't have done that. Because you were like, who are you?
Yeah, because I hadn't even opened the door good, and I was like, yo, and I had on sweats.
That was my opportunity.
Yeah.
I saw you, and I was like, there's my opportunity.
And I was like, yo, who is this young man just rolled? I mean, he just all of a sudden, he just appeared. I was like, whoa, right? And so I was sharing that with a buddy of mine, and I was sharing it in the command staff. I was like, yo, this young brother just rolled up on me real quick, right? And then once we started talking, and I was looking at him, and I was like, you know what? I like that. I like that. And then he invited me to be a part of the protest. And then I run into you again, and so I said, you know what? I like that.
Yeah.
I saw when you guys went past us. You know what? That's all right. And it made me feel good that we're protesting. And I see a change coming.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's the biggest thing. And one of the things that I just tried to hammer home even before the protests, I'm calling people that I know that are a part of, the community here in Winston-Salem and saying, hey, spread the word. This is peaceful protest, because the systematic change that we're looking for is going to do way more than, busting a window out of a business that, essentially a lot of us have put blood, sweat, and tears into building this city up. We don't want to burn it down.
Without question.
Let's continue building it up. Let's, not cause destruction and start tearing up businesses. And so when you let people know, hey, we're actually working towards something, and you communicate to them that, hey, we're looking for actual change here, it helps them feel, more comfortable and have more hope and not feel like they have to take it into their own hands to, bust a window thinking that they're going to invoke some type of change doing that when they know, hey, there are people that are working on our behalf to make sure this happens. And we actually show them, hey, here's proof of what we're working on. They feel a lot more comfortable to not do things of that nature.
Well, tell me something. I'm going to give you 30 seconds or a minute. You tell me something you want to say, anything you want to leave the listeners, the viewers with. Give it to them.
Yeah, for sure. I think the main thing is having the tough conversations, but also actually doing something. And I'm going to keep saying it because it's going to happen. And so you're going to have the people that show up in the masses, thousands of people that show up to the protest. But, essentially where you're going to be in 2 to 3 weeks, 4 weeks. And I'm personally, putting things on my social media to help people to kind of navigate to actually taking action. And so we will want to get more testing sites in East Winston for COVID-19. And so I put on my social media, hey, send our county commissioner this email, just copy and paste, made it simple. We got a few hundred emails sent out, and within a couple hours we got a reply, saying, hey, we're gonna add this testing site on Highland Avenue and a few other places. And so I want people to engage in the conversation, but also engage in taking action. And so my thing and my one communication to everyone is just not just go to the protest, not say things on social media, but actually take action. So.
Well, you and I are going to continue talking even after this day because, one, I want us to continue the conversation. How do we bring about positive change? The other thing is that I want to see, I don't want to say talk you or persuade you, but I want you to consider coming in law enforcement. You know why? Because the change begins with diversity. The change begins with different minds, different thoughts coming in.
For sure.
We need men and women like yourself. We need people that are in it for the right reasons.
For sure.
And so that we don't paint all of us with the same brush to where you come and you see. But you know what? I want to leave you with. I want to share something with you. So several years ago, I was working as a special agent, and I was overseas. We was overseas in the country. I won't mention the country's name. And when we would come back from mission assignments outside the embassy, you would see the flag waving in the distance. And I used to get chill bumps on my arms when I saw the flag waving in the distance. And one of the guys that was with us, who was not a citizen of the U.S., who was basically one of our should I say, handlers in that part of the world. And so, foreign nationals. And so I was making comments about my country. And he said to me, how do you love a country that has done this, that, and the other? And when he said that to me, I got kind of irritated with him. And here's what I said to him. I said, let me share something with you. My country may not be all that she should be, but she's better than she used to be.
For sure.
And what I'm seeing now with the protests and the positive movement, she's going to be better than she's ever been.
For sure. And I agree.
And so I want you to keep bringing positive change. I want you to stay positive. I want you to keep bringing about the change, right? And all the people out there that are listening and watching, I want you to know that here at the Forsyth County Sheriff's Office, we appreciate your positive and peaceful protest. And if I can speak for the police chief, I'm sure she does as well. Just want to tell you that I love this city. I love this county. I love this country. May God continue to smile upon you and all of us. Until we talk again, Godspeed.
Thank you, Sheriff.
Appreciate you.
Appreciate
Yes,
you.